By any standard, Bradford Bishop was a man of many accomplishments. With an Ivy League education, 2 master's degrees, and a desirable career. What do you know about Brad Bishop?
So Brad Bishop was a Foreign Service officer, highly intelligent, knew 5 or 6 languages, seemed to have this all-American family, high school sweetheart, 3 good-looking kids, traveled around the world, belonged to the local tennis club, just appeared to have it all.
But according to police, that wasn't enough for Brad Bishop, and they believe his entire family paid the price.
I mean, this is a guy who has no past criminal history.
Correct.
Someone who is, to your knowledge, hasn't committed any other murders, and one day allegedly snaps and kills 5 family members. I mean, how does that even happen?
Horrific. That's the only way I can describe it.
But Bradford Bishop has yet to pay any price for his heinous murders he's accused of committing, allegedly killing his mother, wife, and his 3 young children. He is gone, vanished into thin air. And with his knowledge and credentials, this suspected mass murderer could be anywhere. On the other side of the world, or in the checkout line right in front of you. Where do you believe Brad Bishop is hiding out?
I don't know, but I think he's out there in plain sight. I don't think he's actually hiding.
Blended right into society.
He's blending right in.
Bradford Bishop, an ambitious Foreign Service officer with a resume and career that took him to all ends of the earth for the U.S. State Department.
In Botswana, he was actually the Deputy Chief of Mission, which was a fairly high-level position. And he was doing whatever State Department guys do.
He was the head of a loving young family in Bethesda, Maryland, near his Washington, D.C. office. Sharing a home with his wife Annette, his mother, and 3 small boys ranging in age from 14 to 5 years old. Montgomery County Detective Brian Stafford says they had a lot to live for.
He was a handsome young Foreign Services officer, apparently on the rise. She was a young, attractive woman. They were having kids. By all accounts, the kids were wonderful kids. She was devoted to them as far as we know.
But little did anyone suspect the time bomb that was Bradford Bishop, a man obsessed with his career and reportedly under treatment for severe depression. It all boiled over the day he was turned down for a much-coveted promotion, and investigators say Bishop snapped, flying into a rage, aimed not only at his employers, but his unsuspecting family.
He purchases what's called a sledgehammer, but it's not the big 2-handed kind. It's a small, like 9-pound sledge.
How were they murdered?
Apparently it was through blunt force trauma.
With that small sledgehammer?
The wounds were considered to be consistent with that type of a tool. The boys were apparently killed in their beds, so I would imagine he would have had to have killed Annette first, because I can't see him having killed 3 other people in the house with her being awake in the house and not knowing that.
And what was the crime scene like?
The crime scene in the house was pretty bad. It was very bloody, as you can imagine it would be if somebody had killed 5 people in the house with that mallet.
Police say Bishop then loaded the bodies into the family car and drove 500 miles south to a remote area in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in North Carolina and got a shovel.
So he took the time to bury,
He took the time to dig a grave.
To dig the grave out.
And then he took the time to pour the gasoline on them and to light that on fire.
I mean, this was well thought out.
It's not that he went home, murdered his family with an implement that was on hand there. When he purchased those items, it was his intent to use that hammer to kill them, and he purchases a gas can and purchases gasoline. So it seems to me consistent with the theory that at that time it was his intention to try to burn the bodies.
And the story might have ended right there in the wilds of North Carolina, if not for a couple of alert Park Service rangers who spotted the smoke from afar.
So they called it in to the Forest Service, and the Forest Service dispatched one of their rangers to see what the smoke was all about. And that ranger found an area, burned grass and a shallow grave with what turned to be 5 bodies in it.
From there, Bishop vanished, leaving his car and plenty of calling cards in his wake, now in the possession of police.
We are inside the evidence room here at Montgomery County Police Headquarters, where we will get a first-hand look at all the evidence in the Brad Bishop case. What is significant about this shovel? What are the important markings on it?
Well, the most significant thing is probably the sticker here, which is the sticker that labeled the shovel as coming from Polk Hardware. And the investigators in North Carolina were able to track that down to a store in Montgomery County and make the initial link between the gravesite.
And it's charred here, and so that's from the fire.
Yeah, you can see some charring on it here that would have occurred with the fire at the gravesite.
What we have here?
This is the gas can that was recovered from the gravesite in North Carolina.
Craftsman?
The Sears Craftsman, and it's a 2.5-gallon can, and that's consistent with what Bishop is known to have purchased at the Sears immediately before he killed his family.
And this actually had his fingerprint on it.
This is the can that they recovered his fingerprint from, yes.
Unfortunately for the law, it took a few days for them to directly connect the remains of charred bodies with Bradford Bishop. By that time, he was long gone, and the manhunt for the suspected cold-blooded killer was on.
There's no doubt in your mind that Brad Bishop is responsible.
Oh, no, absolutely not. For me, Brad Bishop did it.
Bradford Bishop, the one and only suspect in the brutal murder of his wife, mother, and 3 children, is still on the loose.
What could Brad Bishop be doing for a living to earn money?
Oh, he could be doing anything. By all accounts, he was a very intelligent man. He could be teaching a foreign language. He could be teaching English. I mean, if he's overseas somewhere.
Frustrated and exhausted, investigators have responded to numerous tips, hoping to find him, dead or alive.
What have been some of your best leads so far?
The best lead was probably when we exhumed the body in Scottsboro, Alabama.
Did you just think, man, this is it?
I thought we had a really good chance. We had the photo of a deceased individual who was killed during a hit and run in 1981.
How did you get that lead?
It was the local sheriff said, hey, this guy looks a lot like Brad Bishop. You know, let's take a look.
Investigators are disappointed again. DNA from the exhumed body rules out Bishop, but the FBI is upping the ante. After 40 long years of looking for Bradford Bishop, Bishop is now on the FBI's list of 10 most wanted fugitives. They hope it will generate even more leads and close the case once and for all.
When a fugitive is added to the FBI's top 10 most wanted, what does that mean for their case?
Well, one thing, you get an automatic $100,000 reward. It also generates a huge publicity blast. Their face is posted on the FBI website. We had billboards put up in New York, at Times Square, throughout the U.S.
The FBI has even come up with a sculpted model of how Bishop might look today.
We had a world-renowned sculpture artist create a likeness of Bishop, you know, an age-progressed likeness. I think it's very good. I think that's what's generated a lot of tips for us.
With all that, Bradford Bishop still remains a free man with plenty of room to hide.
You've had leads in so many countries.
Yeah. Thailand, Cambodia, Mexico, Canada, Great Britain. Canada's kind of significant because Bishop's mother was Canadian, so familial ties possibly there.
But one man who knows Bishop well says he's certain he saw him in Europe in a chance encounter out of nowhere. It happened near Sorrento, Italy, sometime in 1994, where Roy Harrell was on a skiing vacation.
When I was drying my hands and proceeding to leave the restroom, he was standing there. I said, "Hey, you're Brad Bishop, aren't you?" And he looked at me and said, "Oh God, no," and ran from me out into a blinding rainstorm. And I followed him, and I caught myself. I thought, you're dealing with a man who is charged with murder.
But Harrell says he got a pretty good look.
He gotten older. He also had a beard in strange parts up here on the cheeks that he kept carefully trimmed. They weren't even connected to his sideburns. He'd gotten quite a bit more weight on, but his facial appearance was virtually the same. That's what I'd remember.
And Harold was no casual acquaintance of Brad Bishop. He worked closely with him for years at the State Department.
Brad Bishop was somebody who was very selective in who he would even have contact with. He was someone who was very anxious to make it in the Foreign Service.
And he also knew the deeper side of the man that lay hidden from the rest of the world.
That he did have a very volatile temper. He frequently said to me, sometimes I just lose control. And I said, and that's rather dangerous for a diplomat to be doing.
In fact, Roy Harrell was one of the last people to see Bishop just before the multiple murders of his family, when he left work early after failing to get a promotion to an overseas assignment.
He said, well, I think I'm getting the flu. And I said, well, go home. It's a long weekend and let's get together next week. He said, yeah, if there is a next week. Very curious comment.
Police have never come up with a solid motive for why Bishop would kill his family. But Harrell says there was plenty of tension in the house, especially between Bishop and his wife and mother, who had no interest in moving overseas.
Annette Bishop had her own career, and she was very reluctant to uproot her 3 children, and his mother carried the purse strings, and she never let him forget that. He was resentful of the fact that they were, for want of a better term, retarding his career.
After spotting Bishop all those years later in Italy, Harrell says he went to authorities in Rome to alert them, but the information never led to Bishop or an arrest.
It was definitely Brad Bishop, and I don't think he would have run from me had I not, for a better term, had the goods on him.
Investigators in the U.S. never put police resources into pursuing the sighting, knowing it was only one of many from around the world. Wherever he is, Bishop clearly has the resources and the know-how to stay several steps ahead of the law. But lawmen say they expect to get their man, no matter how long it takes or what condition he's in after 40 years.
FBI is offering a $100,000 reward for any information that leads to the capture of Brad Bishop, if he's dead or alive. If you know that he was buried in a cemetery or in an unmarked grave, call us, email us, post it on Facebook, let us know.